Welcome everyone to the Insight Group's webinar on one-to-one social media engagement. Over the next 50 minutes, we'll be discussing how to use social to drive authentic and meaningful engagement with your customers. My name is Jack Edgar. I'm the project director here at the Insight Group, and I'll be hosting today's webinar. Thank you so much for joining us. The webinar actually forms a part of, just one part really, of the agenda for this year's Corporate Social Media Summit happening in New York on June the 20th and 21st. The event brings together 350 senior corporate executives from some of the world's biggest and most social brands, ultimately to discuss this year's most pressing social media challenges and indeed opportunities as well. Now, before we get started with today's discussion, I want to remind you that we are indeed recording the webinar, so everyone will receive those recordings a little later next week. The webinar is also very, very much interactive, so I really urge you to type in your own questions into the chat box on the right-hand side so that we can ensure the insight is tailored to your challenges as much as possible. Indeed, do not wait until the end of the webinar to send these through. I'll be incorporating them throughout the discussion and throughout the webinar, so the sooner the better in that regard. We're also using the hashtag CSMNY, so please do tweet away any thoughts and indeed further questions that you might have. Now, firstly, I'm delighted to introduce our speakers to the webinar. Firstly, Amy Weissenbach, the Chief Marketing Officer over at Wilson Sports, Jennifer Lashua, the Chief of Staff of Digital Marketing and Media at Intel, and Dave Savoy, the Digital Marketing and Strategy Director at Farmers Insurance. Welcome to you all. Now, before we get started, I'd like them to introduce themselves just very, very briefly to give a little bit more background, and then we'll get started with the discussion and with the questions. So, Amy, over to you first, Amy.
Hi, nice to meet everyone. Amy Weisenbach again. I lead marketing globally for Wilson Sporting Goods. For those of you who aren't familiar with the brand, we're a 102-year-old American brand, the leading maker of sporting goods equipment, performance sports equipment around the world. We're in a number of sports, everything from tennis, which you're probably familiar with us in, to football, basketball, soccer, volleyball, baseball. We also own a few other brands, including Louisville Slugger, which is now part of our portfolio as of last year. So nice to meet everyone.
Thanks very much, Amy. Over to you, Jen.
Hi, everyone. I'm Jen Lashua. I'm Chief of Staff for Intel's Digital Marketing and Media organization. We're based, the team, the Digital Marketing and Media team is based here in the San Francisco Bay Area, Silicon Valley area. And an area of focus for me that I think could be relevant in today's webinar is building our executive leaders' social media presence. So about 41% of people believe that a company's employees are more trustworthy than their PR department. So it's really important for us to have a voice on social media, both through our executive leadership and through as many of our 110,000 employees as we possibly can around the globe. So that's something I can talk a little bit more about when we get started.
Fantastic, and we definitely will be coming to that, so thank you for teeing that one up perfectly, Jen. And finally, Dave, if you'd like to introduce yourself.
Certainly. So thanks for having me on the panel. So I am the Digital Marketing and Strategy Director over at Farmers Insurance, focusing on primarily right now improving our life insurance line of business, visibility, brand awareness, and driving a B2B2C sort of model, and then we're generating leads for our agents who actually then take the next step and close the deal with our consumers. So there's a lot of challenges going on in the industry, a lot of disruption in terms of directing communications with consumers, especially on social media. So definitely glad to be here to take part.
Thanks very much, Dave. I think a nice place to start would actually to look at really the phrase one-to-one engagement and one-to-one marketing overall. I mean, it's undoubtedly a bit of a buzz phrase right now. So firstly, coming to you, Amy, but based on your experience, really what separates a brand that is indeed actually engaging their customers on a personal level, perhaps compared to a brand who is just listing as something that they're aspiring to do? And of course, there's always improvements to be made, but where does the difference come in actually doing this and perhaps saying you're trying to?
Sure. Well, at Wilson right now, we're in the process of making that evolution. I would be honest if I didn't say that we're not really doing it today, or we're just getting started with doing one-to-one marketing and really I think it's three things as we think about it on our team and that we're trying to do. I think one is about building the discipline into your day of staying on top of it, because doing it well requires kind of an always-on mentality. Maybe not, consumers don't expect 24 hours a day, but certainly responsiveness is very important. I think, secondly, moving from passive engagement, so not just responding to the stuff that's coming to you, but putting in place tools that allow you to surface content and engagements with consumers that you could be a part of as a brand, or maybe you're already part of as a brand, that you're not necessarily going to see in your standard reporting tools. So we're putting in place some new things into our technology stack to make sure we're surfacing when people are posting pictures of our products that where we may not be getting tagged, or when people are having conversations that are really close in and relevant to our brand, where we could be part of the conversation. And then I think third, having a clear set of content pillars that you build your engagement around. So not trying to be everything to everyone, but thinking about the real unique value your brand can provide to your target consumer, and choosing those places to be part of a one-to-one conversation. I mean, there's of course all the customer service piece of it, which is you're going to respond to anything a consumer asks, but particularly in the proactive space, making sure to pick and choose the most relevant ways and the most value-adding ways, kind of thinking about generosity and what are the things that your brand can provide consumers. Because if you're going to butt into their conversations, you better do it with their providing value in mind.
Exactly, yeah, rather than being unwanted in that regard. Jen, would you kind of echo those kind of pillars in terms of generating a more personal interaction with the customers? And I suppose, what are you guys doing over at Intel to generate a more personal engagement, a more one-to-one engagement?
Yeah, I mean, I can take this from kind of two sides. So first, taking it from the customer's perspective, I think for the customer, and I'll put myself in the place, and let's say I'm the customer, one-to-one marketing means personalized marketing that's going to be really targeted and optimized for me as a customer. So look specifically at what are my habits, my preferences, what have I done in the past, maybe what are some things that I'm thinking about, looking at what I do digitally and then, online and then offline as well. And then giving me an experience that's really going to be specifically tailored for me. So it's obviously a really different experience that we want to provide someone if they are a technologist in the maker space, and they're really interested in building their own technology, versus maybe somebody who's a passive first-time buyer consumer who maybe doesn't have a PC right now but could be potentially interested in one in the future. Those two different types of people are going to be really, really different. And so obviously serving them the same message and the same type of content is really different. But then you can get even more granular than that when you can look at really specifically, okay, where do these people live? What are their habits? What are the specific demographics? What are some other websites that they've looked at? What are some other social accounts that they're following? And you can really build a very distinct and specific picture of who that individual is. So you can really personalize and target your marketing for them. And then kind of on the other side of it, one-to-one can also be connecting with people in a one-to-one environment. So social media gives us that opportunity uniquely to have an authentic dialogue with customers and influencers who make decisions about what kind of technology to purchase, decisions about where to apply for their next job. And this is based a lot on what individual employees have to say. And so those one-to-one conversations can be really important in that regard.
Well, what's not lovely highlighting there, not only does social provide you with the tools and I suppose the insight to be able to deliver those tailored experiences, but also the environment through which to kind of connect with them as well. And I was going to say, in relation to that initial point, Jen, really what are some of the first steps that a company can take to move away from kind of broad personas and broad demographics to actually marketing to individual customers? What are the kind of key first steps?
Well, I would say, it's understanding your customer base a lot better. So there's certainly some technology elements that have to be put in place to give you the right access to the right levels of data on your customers, so that you're getting a better understanding of them. And then there's also, you have to be prepared for, okay, now that you understand who your different customers are and what are some of the individual opportunities that you have to connect with people, you have to have the content to be able to support that. So the volume of amount of content that you need to connect with many different customers on an individual level, it's exponential. So you really have to be prepared with multiple iterations on a single piece of content, different content that reaches different circles and different spaces, different passion points. So that's definitely something that you'll want to be thinking about in combination is, once given the opportunity to connect with people on an individualized and personalized level via technology, you then have to be prepared with, okay, now what are you going to say to each one of these very individual customers?
Fantastic. Dave, I just want to come to you, and again, if you do have some kind of points based on those first steps to indeed kind of move beyond broader personas and to a more individualized and personalized connection, if you do have any kind of pointers on that, please do share. But also, I suppose, what specific goals and KPIs that you attach to one-to-one engagement? How do you know that you're having success in this area?
Certainly. So for a service business like insurances, it's not a one-and-done purchase. We need to make sure that the customer feels supported fully by the agent, by the company, by the policy that they have. So social media is about continuing that relationship. So we measure persistency and lapse ratio decline. So we want people to, keep their policy with us. So some of the, I guess, high-level KPIs is obviously how have we moved the needle towards that bottom line goal? I mean, are people sticking around longer? Are we getting some positive NPS feedback? So that's something that we definitely look at. How willing are our consumers to, share the experiences that they have, the positive experiences that they have with us, with their friends? So when you're looking at just a one-to-one kind of a social engagement, I mean, you kind of break it down and look at, how many people are engaging with your personalized content. And it really depends. I mean, so it depends on the type of post that we're creating, the type of engagement that we're looking at to generate. Maybe we want to start a conversation. Maybe we just want to drive awareness of a certain aspect of life insurance. So one of the things that we do is to create articles that live on our site that kind of keep people in the know about current issues related to insurance. Maybe it's ways that they can reduce the chance of being in an accident, the ways that they can improve their health, that kind of thing. So we provide value that way. And then social, we need to make sure that we're reaching out to the right customer individually that's going to find the most value from the other types of content that we're creating. So the answer is it varies, but we're definitely looking at the bottom line and then kind of working back from there.
Fantastic. Would you mirror that, Amy, in terms of you mentioned your initial kind of pillars in terms of trying to generate a more one-to-one and personalized approach to social engagement and your wider marketing? So what I suppose specific goals do you have for this process over the course of the year? What does success look like? Oh, hello, Amy. Sorry, can you hear me?
Oh gosh, I'm sorry. I put myself on mute. Sorry about that. Webinar fail. So for us, because we're at the beginning of this journey, I mean, we've been doing social for a long time, but we have not been doing it. We've been very much using it as a broadcast tool, and we're trying to evolve from that to exactly what we're talking here about today. So for us, it's really about test and learn. I don't think we'd be lying if we said that we knew exactly what all of those pillars are going to be. But I think as a starting point, I would say we're doing two things. One, we're listening very intently to the organic and native conversations that are happening in each of our sports, and they're very different by sport. So what high school football players talk about online and in social is very different than what a 45-year-old golfer talks about. And the frequency of which and what they're willing to share and how they want to engage with brands is also very different. So it's really important to really understand the native and organic conversations that are happening. And then we're just doing a ton of testing and learning. And so we we've been doing things that today we're doing things in social that we may not do tomorrow because we might decide that they don't work, but we know that in order to hone in on what's the most engaging and the most interesting and really find out what our core athletes want to engage with us around, we've got to take some risks. And so that's been a big part of my job, is making sure that everyone in the organization understands that we're giving our team some freer reins than maybe we will ongoing, in order to give us the space to take those risks and to get that learning. And then later, over time, hopefully we can tighten in and rein in a little bit and do the stuff that we know works the best, so that we can focus our time and efforts.
And indeed, I'm sure that cultural change and that mentality is difficult to instill in a long-term process as well. You talked about the importance of having a always-on kind of mentality to achieve this and secure this. So how have you gone about doing so? Has that been a challenge? And I suppose how have you got everyone to buy into this always-on approach?
Yeah, I mean, so far so good. I think everyone knows we need to be doing it, and because our team is made up of people who are also really passionate about our sports. Our team members are, my fellow colleagues are personally engaged in these sports, and so they know the kinds of conversations and they know the kinds of things that are happening in social personally, and they, I think, intuitively know that we need to be there, and we need to be there in a bigger way than we are. So I think we're getting some runway of trust to be able to go and try these things. And then secondly, we've really made a bunch of infrastructure changes to enable that kind of always on. So in the past, we were using a mix of, on some categories, we were using agencies, and some we were trying to do it in-house with teams that were tasked on other things as well. And we're building a dedicated in-house social team with deep sports expertise in each of our sports to really be able to focus full time on evolving our social strategy and execution.
Fantastic. We were actually getting loads of questions coming through in the chat box, so thank you so much. And I'm going to come to one of those now, actually. I'd rather integrate them sooner rather than later. And the first question, I'm going to come to you, actually, Jen. And one of the audience wants to know if you could share some details, if possible, if around whether you have implemented special systems within the organization to have a more customized and personal relationship with fans and followers, and I suppose how your social media team is structured to support this.
Sure. Have we implemented more specific kind of framework and structure in the team? Yes, absolutely. One of the biggest changes that we have made is the formation of a real-time analytics team. So data and analytics is something that we feel really passionately needs to be a part of every single employee's role within digital marketing and media. You can't be in digital today without being connected to the data. It's just, you're not doing a good job if you're not connected to your data. So we expect that everyone is paying attention to their data and their trends and analyzing things. But at the same time, you also have a day job to do, and the types of people who are developing long-form content for some of our brand journalism sites, or maybe developing a social creative. They're not always the same type of people who might really excel at diving really deep into the data. So to help us with that, we've created a real-time analytics team. And it's this team's job to do just what it says, capture and collect the data and then transform that data into analytics and recommendations for the rest of the organization. So that is a key principle by which we work today. And we have many different ways by which that data flows throughout the organization. We have structured and regular meetings where that data is shared. There are regular reports that are shared out, but even having a meeting on a Friday to go through some of the data that you collected over the course of the week, that's oftentimes too late. So we also have real-time dashboards where people can actually go in and look at the data and the performance of their individual campaigns, and then optimize against it.
So there are systems in place that help us do that, but then there are also just those people connections in place too, where folks know who to talk to, and they know who's running this piece of creative and who's running that campaign, and there are people who are looking out for things to optimize them, and then connecting with the right people to ensure that if we're seeing that something is really spiking, or on the other hand really tanking, who to talk to, who to connect with in order to make some optimization tweaks to get that performing better.
It's become very, very clear over the first kind of 20 minutes or so that something that is intrinsically linked to the idea of one-to-one engagement is indeed your social data analytics, and generating this I suppose, more single customer view. I don't mean single as in your customer base as a whole, but actually individuals. Coming to you, Dave, I mean, how important is it for you and farmers to generate a more intricate and comprehensive view of the individual customer? And I suppose, how are you using your social data to do this?
Sure. So it is quite complicated, because not only do we have corporate social communications going out to generate the ongoing conversations at a higher level, we're also publishing content across the platform called Hearsay to make pre-approved content available to our agents for them to share what is going to best fit with their consumers and with their geographic, sociographic segments. So, I mean, we have multiple sources of data that we need to tap into in order to check on the health of the posts that we're creating, the content that we're creating. So it's not quite hyper-localized, but it is very localized in that we're looking at creating content that's going to play well with a very tight segment of the market, because we're looking across the country and saying, all right, so now what is going on in Dallas, Texas, right? And what kind of content do those agents tell us that their consumers are looking for, and what do we see going on in that part of the country, which is going to be very different than a conversation going on in my hometown of Seattle. So, I mean, it's quite different. We have multiple teams. We have teams that are creating the stuff for agents to share with their consumers, and we have a team that's doing the corporate stuff as well. And there are quite a lot of flavors to the corporate stuff that we're creating. Agent stuff, not so much. It's more just trying to get people in the door to have that one-on-one conversation. But from a corporate standpoint, we're doing brand awareness plays. We're trying to connect with our current audience. We're trying to reach out to a new audience via dark posts and whatnot. And also, of course, trying to get our direct response, our performance team optimized as well. So it's kind of a lot going on.
Fantastic. Amy, coming back to you, in relation to analyzing the sea of social data that you have, really how do you kind of cut through that and actually go about identifying very specific and actionable insights, and really, I suppose, what your customers' passion points are, so that you are able to kind of feed that back into your campaigns, your content strategy, and your messaging. How are you guys going about doing that at the moment?
Well, I think it's a combination of two things. One, looking for short-term learnings that you can optimize around. So you're seeing things in the data on a day-to-day basis that you give you opportunities to lean into, or you're finding things that might not be working that you're responding to. But I think it's also important to not be so focused on the day-to-day data, and also take a step back and look at it over time, and really look at a collection of data to really understand some larger trends and insights that you can drive over time. So I think it's a combination of both. It's really hard because social is so relentless and it's so in the moment to take those steps back. And if you're in a case like us where we don't have a dedicated analytics team, so I've got the same people doing our community management, looking at analytics, generating a lot of the content themselves, we've got to be really thoughtful about what we're spending our time on, because we can't do everything. We don't have the luxury of having dedicated people doing each part of the process. So I think for us, it's getting our team to focus on the immediate optimizations, but also the longer-term insight development and refining the strategy as we go. and not just assuming that once you've set the strategy, once you've set your content pillars, that those are going to be the strategy and the content pillars forever.
I mean, you mentioned one of the fundamental challenges associated with this in terms of the relentlessness of social and the amount of data that's coming in. And actually, a number of people have asked, and I'm going to come to you, Jen, on this. A number of people have asked, what are some of the fundamental challenges you've experienced in relation to your social data and the direction that can provide to your engagement strategy? What are ultimately some of the key stumbling blocks that you've hit, and how did you get around them?
I would say that one of the the key challenges is just there's a lot of data. There's so much data that it can actually cause paralysis of a team or an organization because they don't know where to look to find the insights. So knowing, one of the things that we really try to do is decide what types of knowledge or information or insights we need to have, and then go chase the data that's going to help to give us those insights, versus just looking at the data that's available to you and trying to figure something out based upon that data. I think it's kind of going at it from the wrong angle. So by having these data scientists on board, they're really thinking about the data strategy for what is it that we need to find out in order to better inform our marketing communications, and then go chase that data, go find it, go find the network that has it, go find the partner that has it, the ad agency that has it, go figure out where that data lies, get it, collect it, figure out how you're going to operationalize that, and then how you're going to draw insights from it. Having a pile of data is useless. What you need are insights. And it takes people who are really knowledgeable and skilled in that area to be able to take a lot of data, transform that into some analytics, and then draw some insights out of it.
Know what you're looking for ultimately. And Paige Wilson has actually just sent through a question specifically on the back of that, Jen, and asks, do you actually use the same type of data analysis or have the same data focus for IQ as well as for Intel FreePass and even your website?
We do have the same focus on data for IQ and for our website and for social. We have an integrated team which includes those elements. It includes our social media, it includes our .com and our IQ presence, and it includes our media. So those groups are all within the same organization, and we function very cohesively across. So we are collecting data. Let's use an example. We're collecting data from an ad campaign that the media team is running and optimizing, and we're pulling that back through to the social team to help to inform them on, hey, this piece of the campaign that we're running over here on Twitter is really working. Let's create more content like that. Let's generate more conversations that are like that. That stuff is really working. That team is also the same team actually that writes the IQ content. So the IQ team can then go off and continue to do their content development and their long-form writing in the areas that are really resonating. That gets pulled through the social media team. That then gets media applied to it to have amplification. So it's really all part of a very connected entity that's sharing data across the board.
Fantastic. We're going to move on just to, there's a lot of questions coming in relation to the relationship between online engagement and offline engagement. And Dave, I'm actually going to come to you and look at the issue of kind of one-to-one interaction in the age of mass media and online engagement. Often the kind of old way, in inverted commas, of engaging and interacting customers is seen as far more personalized and customer-centric. So for you and your industry, Dave, I assume that was kind of the face-to-face interaction where an agent would sit down in front of the customer and get to know them, learn about them, their family, their aspirations, etc. Not to say that obviously still doesn't happen, but how can social media allow you to generate this one-to-one interaction, but at a larger scale?
So social media will be a primary way that we can get people kind of in the door, not the physical door as in days of old, as you mentioned, but into our website. So a tool that we're actually developing now and should be launched in the next couple of months here is going to help people figure out what kind of coverage they need, insurance coverage, be it auto coverage, home coverage, or life insurance coverage, which is more complex, and take them through a personalized experience, gathering info such as their name, their age, their income level, and then a variety of other things that's going to go into a mix and then spit out a personalized result. The way that we're going to be able to, I think, optimize the experience is if we're able to identify a good starting point for the consumer and figure out exactly what are those trigger points that at which a consumer is going to be interested in this sort of thing. So you kind of work back from what you want them to do and then figure out how you best communicate with the consumers across the life events. So people consider insurance when they make changes in their life. They have a new job. They are having a baby, buying a house. They've reached a milestone birthday. All of these events are moments at which we have an opportunity to connect with consumers in a personal way. I think we need to be very careful that we avoid the creepy factor and say, for example, hi Dave, we know your birthday is tomorrow, and we know that you visited these sites, therefore. So I guess the proof is in the pudding. If you are able to create content which is going to best resonate with the consumer and get them to have this interaction with us, be it on our website or in person with an agent, does it work? I mean, do you have a higher conversion rate than other more generic types of posts? And that's how you do the metrics there.
And Marty, so actually one of the audience members just asked the question on the back of that, Dave. I mean, do you ultimately view your website as an opportunity to be your primary social hub? I mean, in relation to what you were mentioning at the start there.
It definitely is one of the primary destinations that we try to drive traffic to. It's sort of the next step. I mean, we want to have conversations on the platforms themselves to make sure that current customers mainly are engaged with us so that they feel like we're listening to their needs and we're providing some added value to them. But I do think that our website is a good hub for people to stay connected with us, to learn more, to make sure that they have the right coverage and the right types of policies.
Fantastic. Amy, in terms of the challenge associated with trying to be as one-to-one, as personalized as possible, do you feel that there is sometimes a difficult balance between, I suppose, staying true to your overall brand personality and brand story whilst trying to be as targeted as possible? So, are you able to create this consistent narrative of what Wilson Sports is and what it stands for, when at the same time you're trying to be everything to everyone, if that makes sense?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's the hardest in the stuff where you're responding to consumers because you're not controlling the kinds of questions that are coming your way. I think putting in place some protocol around how we handle certain responses. So if someone posts a picture of a football that's really sentimental, that's falling apart, and talking about how it's seen better days, we know we've put in place a protocol where we can reach out to that consumer through social and say, hey, we'd love to relace your ball for you and help bring it back to life. Let me know if you're interested, right? And so there's sort of some programmatic things that we've started to do that allow us to respond to the kinds of issues that we see come up over time. A funny one on the humorous side is we get a lot of people tweeting at us saying Wilson, like from the movie Castaway, and we've always laughed about it. And one of our social guys, one of our social community managers, started tweeting back, Jack, and it's become kind of a thing that we're doing on all of our social channels now, just to be fun. And I don't know, could you argue, is that in our brand voice? I mean, we've had conversations about that and what is the right. We're still, I think, forming what our brand voice in social is, but I think having some consistent ways that you're responding to things that you see over time. I think the trickier part is how you handle one-offs and how you handle, the more negative stuff too is often the challenge. But I really see a lot of those as opportunities to turn online into offline, because it's a lot easier to solve people's problems one-to-one in a real person-to-person. So getting someone on the phone or getting them to a direct message, being able to solve their problems offline as well as you solve them online, I think sometimes. And that's very true to who we are as a company. So it's also, I think, helps us keep our voice consistent over time. It's not just having a canned response, but having a real person respond and being willing to solve their problem.
Most definitely, and I think you touched upon an area there that a lot of people are kind of asking questions on. Really, what is the relationship between kind of customer service departments when using social and also your wider marketing department? And we are going to come to that. But firstly, we've had a lot of people badgering me to go back to Jen about what she mentioned right at the start. So I'm not going to hold off any longer on that. And really, as you mentioned, Jen, often an untapped resource in driving a more authentic, a more human interaction with your brand is indeed your own workforce. So how are you going about enabling your company's executives with the skills, the strategies, and also their teams as well, that they need to be able to be effective in using social media on behalf of Intel?
Sure. Yeah, I'm glad it's an area of interest, and I think what it's the way that we've approached it is we approach the larger employee population with kind of one technique, and then we approach our executive social media participation with some other techniques. So I'll talk about what we do for our broader employee population first. We've created an app which folks download on their phone. You can also use it via the web connection, if you're on a connected VPN or an Intel network. And what we do here is we pull through the app some great content that you can surface out to their social media feeds, and we make it just really, really easy for people. A lot of times, and this might just be an Intel thing, I'm not sure, but a lot of times what prevents employees from becoming active on social media is because they're scared. They're afraid that they're going to say the wrong thing. They're afraid that they're going to get in trouble. They're afraid they're going to disclose some kind of information that they shouldn't be. So to keep themselves safe, they just don't do anything. So we've kind of come around that with two things. One is the app, so you know that anything that's in the app, and there's a wide variety of content that's in there, is updated really frequently. Anything that's in there is fair game for you to publish, to tweet, to put on your LinkedIn, on your Facebook, etc. And we also have in place a social governance team that does a really nice job of creating some very easily digestible and actually enjoyable content and training materials on how to participate in social media and keep yourself safe. So they're doing that. So with the combination of the two, we are giving people the tools that they can use to go and be active and participate in social media, and we're also giving them the confidence so that they feel like, yep, I've been trained, I know what I should say and what I shouldn't, and I can go off and do this. And then on the executive side of things, yeah, go ahead.
No, you just perfectly. I was going to say on the executive, that's exactly what I was going to come to.
Sure. So on the executive side of things, as you might expect, this takes a really different approach. In many cases, executives, and I don't think this is unique to Intel, I think executives across the board want to participate in social media. They understand its value. They just don't know how to do it, and they don't have the time. So we are helping to resolve those needs by helping to get them more educated and giving them, they don't need the complete, A to Z. They don't need to, need every single trick in the book. They just really need to understand how to get started. And I think that when we can make things it's kind of interesting because the whole webinar is about personalization and kind of making things really targeted. It's kind of the same with these executives. When you can make things very personalized and very targeted for them and give them only the relevant information that they need to know to go and create their social media presence, it works like a charm. They can understand it. They can see what they need to do. They're not overwhelmed by things. And it's very different for different executives in terms of what they want to do. The other side of it, though, is the time. It definitely takes time. And so the way that we're coming at that is we have some folks in our organization, myself being one of them, who are really focused on helping to enable our executives in their social media. And it takes time. It takes, some one-on-ones. It also takes working with their teams because in some cases they have, a great operations team behind them that might be doing a lot of the kind of, preparation work that's necessary before you want to share something on Twitter. You obviously want to read the whole article top to bottom. You want to pull out the relevant data points, et cetera, et cetera. If you can have somebody that's helping to do that in the background, it just enables that executive to much more quickly be able to look at something and say, yeah, that's really interesting to me. I think I want to tweet it. I'm going to go ahead and do it. So it just kind of operationalizes that whole process. So that's the way we've been focusing on the employee engagement.
Fantastic. Someone's just asked actually, do you reward your kind of internal brand advocates in any way, Jen, or is it as if have they bought in? Are they bought into the process so much that there isn't any need for any incentivization program?
Yeah, I don't know if there's any incentive that's actually needed, but we do have, via the app that I mentioned, there is kind of a leaderboard where you can see who's been the most active, and everybody of course wants to see their name on the board, and so there's people that are kind of competing. But I also think that people just track each other and they know who's doing what, and they're just internally, I think, motivated. They're intrinsically motivated to be active on social and to kind of outperform, so to speak, their peers. So I don't even know if that kind of reward is necessarily even necessary, but we do have that leaderboard that makes it easier for people to kind of track.
Fantastic. We've still got loads of questions coming in, which is great. More questions the better. So I'm going to, in the final few minutes, I'm going to try, do my best to rattle through them as quickly as possible. So, David, this one's to you from Edward Staples. How does Farmers study the consumer's brand experience across channels? For example, agents, social, phone, etc.
That's a difficult question, but good question. So we're looking actually at doing certain attribution modeling, right? So we can tell what is the optimal customer journey in getting from being aware that Farmers exists and offers various types of insurance to being comfortable with what we offer, who we are, how long we've been in business, that kind of thing. Then selling the value of our agents, and then ultimately getting them to quote and buy a policy. And I mean, it's an ongoing process. I mean, what we're finding is, depending on how users first interact with us, there's going to be an optimal next step. And so, like for example, if someone is engaging with us via their phone, which is actually greatly increasing share of how consumers are trying to interact with us, we try and get them directly to an agent as quickly as possible. So we'll have a quick-to-call number that appears, across our site and, of course, across our paid social media as well. So, for that kind of interaction, it's just a very quick handoff. Whereas if we were trying to cultivate, awareness across, for example, an agent's current book of business, it's probably going to be, and again, not on mobile, but now I'm thinking about desktop and tablet. It's probably going to be a little bit slower of a play, whereas they might direct the user to the agent's personal profile page, they might direct them to farmers.com, or they might just have a conversation ongoing on the platform itself. Pick on Facebook, for example, have a comment string about how an agent might be able to help. So it's very complicated. It varies, and it really depends on where the user's at, how technically they choose to interact with us, and where they are in the funnel, what kind of content we're trying to serve to them to move them along towards doing business with us.
So Ed would certainly put you on the spot there, Dave. I like it very much. Keep them coming. And Amy, actually coming to you, Adrian Waltz asks you, when optimizing engagement, how do you decide when to use paid advertising, promotion, boost versus organic posts? So the age-old question of a relationship, paid versus organic. What's your views on that?
Well, I mean, you need to do organic because it's important for your page, for the visibility of your page and all those kinds of things, and for the small group of people who probably are following what you are doing on an ongoing basis, for those kind of most loyal fans and customers. So it's important to do organic, but really paid is is where it's at in terms of bringing new people to your brand and engaging with a broader base of consumers. The other thing that we found in paid is that it allows you to be a lot more targeted. So, for example, we launched a campaign in the fall that was a brand level campaign across all of our sports, and there was one central video asset that we wanted to get eyeballs on. So we posted it organically from our Wilson Sporting Goods corporate account. We reshared it organically from all of our sports-specific accounts. But we put the bulk of our time and effort into our paid campaign, and we actually built out lots of micro audiences and then developed custom thumbnails and copy for those micro audiences. And what we found was that the engagement was much higher in those micro audiences because what we had was, in football, for example, we had a different target for high school football players, a different target for parents of high school football players, and a different target for coaches of high school football. And each had its own thumbnail, its own copy. And then the conversation that happened around it was really rich because you had players talking to players, coaches talking to coaches, parents talking to parents within the sport. It would have been much easier to just boost or put paid, do dark posting around the one single asset. It took us a ton more time and a lot of effort to manage all of those, but the engagement rates were so much higher because we took the time to build out those kind of micro assets and micro audiences.
Fantastic. On the back of that, someone's just asked, in terms of the sheer amount of content and messaging that the everyday consumer is consuming all the time, do you think that there's a point where the customer kind of reaches their saturation point and they kind of can't take any more? What do you do then? Because regardless of how good your story is, regardless of how good your targeting is, there kind of comes a point where they kind of pull up the drawbridge. So in that incredibly difficult situation, what's your advice, Amy?
Sorry, can you repeat that really quick?
Sorry, yes. It's ultimately, given the fact that the modern customer is receiving so many messages, is there a point where they become kind of saturated and can't take any more? And at that point, what do you do as a brand to maintain that engagement, I suppose, keep the conversation going?
Yeah, well, we face that risk a lot because everyone is utilizing sports for their brand, right? So you have endemic sports brands. You have brands like Nike and Under Armour that are spending billions marketing to consumers. You have close-in brands like Gatorade and Beats by Dre. And then you have every other brand and their brother who is leveraging sports. And so it's a really crowded marketplace. And it's really critical for us to be very intentional about what our role in the space is and not try to be everything to everyone. So we've made a lot of choices about stuff we're not going to do. And I think that's important, is that we're not adding to the clutter, but trying to use things that are really meaningful to the athlete themselves, which hopefully will break through, and try to be selective about what we do put out there. So I think the more thoughtful and intentional we are, the more it will break through and the more it won't just feel like it's part of the clutter. But I don't know that there's a marketplace more than sports that's more crowded because everyone is trying to leverage that passion that already exists among consumers for their brand.
Fantastic. Jen, I'm going to come to you. A lot of people are asking really what the focus is and the future. Where is the change going to come? And obviously over the course of 2016, a huge focus for you is that internal engagement and getting your executives on social media. Outside of that, really what major shifts, changes do you see on the horizon in relation to social media engagement? Where are we going to be in 2-3 years?
Well, that's a big question. I actually see social media as there won't be the same delineation between social media and other types of media. I think that social media just is the way that we are doing marketing going forward. And if you think about it, it is inextricably linked with other forms of digital marketing. Now, so that you don't talk about digital marketing unless you're also talking about social media. So those are completely linked. It's very much woven into any TV advertising that you might do. You know, you're completely missing the boat if you're not thinking about how to maximize your TV ad buy with some complementary social media as well. So I just see it as becoming more and more part of your overall advertising plan. I also see it as having many other roles as well. So aside from being a part of what you're doing from a media perspective, it's definitely a part of what brands are doing from a customer service perspective, from a corporate communications perspective. It's just becoming the way that brands are communicating with people on many different levels. So I see that continuing. I see a lot of the technology that's behind social and digital marketing continuing to mature, and there being more technology available, more of the right types of technology, and more great partners to work with that can provide more of the data that you need and more of the insights that you need, because that will continue to be a really critical element of social and digital marketing going forward.
And very quickly on the back of that, actually, Jessie Lights just asked the question, do you see messaging apps fitting into your one-to-one social media engagement in the near future?
Yeah, I think there's definitely opportunity there. I think that in some of our geographies, like our Asia-Pacific geography, has definitely kind of seen a lot of success there. You know, and because they're, I think, a lot more prevalent in that geography. And so they've demonstrated some early learnings and some early successes for us, which could potentially translate to the U.S., but are already having a large impact in the Asia-Pacific region.
Fantastic. And Dave, you have the privilege of rounding us off. Where do you see the change coming in the next 2 to 3 years? What is there any big change on the horizon for you? Obviously, Jen talked about the continuation of social integration to the point where, you know, we stop seeing social in isolation. But outside of that, do you see any major platform changes, technological changes, or anything outside of that?
For us, it's probably going to move more slowly. I mean, I absolutely agree with everything that has been said before. Amy and Jen are hitting the nail square on the head there. For life insurance, for any kind of insurance actually that we offer, is going to be, you know, more heavily regulated. I mean, we're in an industry where every state has their own Department of Insurance, which is really scrutinizing what we say, how we say it, how often we say it, who we're saying it to. You know, there's just kind of like no end to it. So for us, it's going to be, you know, continuing to kind of chip away at that. So yeah, I don't know that we'll ever be in kind of a real-time mode where we can actually just jump right into a conversation. We definitely can enable our agents to do that kind of on our behalf, but from a corporate standpoint, it makes it much more difficult. So I think it's probably where we're going to be taking this is putting more of the reins of the communication in the hands of our agents who engage with the consumers on that one-to-one level as just a standard course of business, and bring those conversations into the office or virtually. So I think there was a comment out there about you know, engaging more via chat apps or text apps and whatnot, and that's absolutely something that I think that we need to make sure that our agents are trained on, aware of, and utilizing, because that's where consumers are. We need to be where they are.
I mean, that empowerment seems to be agent empowerment and employee empowerment seems to be a fundamental theme, you know, across the course of the whole discussion. Thank you again, Dave, for that insight. And what's been really, really nice about today's discussion, indeed, is the different perspectives of not only all our speakers but our listeners as well, coming from different companies, industries, job roles, and of course geographic locations. Unfortunately, given the time, it's now the end of questions and the end of the webinar for today. I'm so sorry if I was unable to get around to the questions. There was so many coming through. I did try my best, believe me. But I would, of course, like to thank our speakers for today, Amy, Jen, and Dave, for their insights, their contributions. Thank you so much. Before everyone leaves for their, what is a very well-deserved coffee now, we'll be sending out the recording of the webinar next week, so no need to worry if you missed any part of the discussion. What's more, the numerous other questions that you do have about this challenge, and of course wider social strategy for 2016, including social care, etc., you can indeed get these answered in person at the Corporate Social Media Summit. As mentioned, the event brings together another 50 leading corporate speakers in the social and digital space in New York on June the 20th and 21st. You can see on the screen there some of the brands that will be speaking and sharing some of their best practice. I've also just sent through a link on the chat box where you can download the summit brochure, so please do check that out, see all the topics, all the speakers, and see if it is indeed very much in line with what you're experiencing and what you're being challenged with over the course of this year. Thank you once again for joining us. Thank you again to our speakers, a huge thank you. And the only thing left to say, I hope you have a great rest of your day. Bye-bye.